Colorado's most famous election denier is still behind bars, but she could be getting out earlier than expected after a court questions the reasoning behind her sentence.
I don't want anyone to think this has to do with politics. This isn't about her political views.
Our snowpack is historically bad right now, a once in 1,000 years kind of bad. Researchers warn it could become more common.
We get this as sort of a preview of the future.
State Democrats are crafting new rules against conversion therapy, even after the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the controversial practice. And a soccer initiative is encouraging kids to use their heads as well as their feet.
Slowly but surely allowing kids to not only grow their soccer skills, but their mental health skills as well.
We're all learning something new tonight on Next. Tina Peters can make as many debunked claims about a rigged election as she wants, and her words shouldn't factor into the length of her sentence. That's what an appeals court determined when it tossed the former Mesa County clerk's 9-year punishment today. The conviction still stands, but she's getting a new sentence, or at least she might. Our Spencer Soysher explains.
Don't be confused. The appeals court opinion in the case against former Mesa County clerk Tina Peters doesn't change much right now.
We got the ruling that we expected, which is the sentence is based on a valid conviction.
Peters is serving a 9-year sentence for her role in orchestrating a breach of her county's election equipment. The Court of Appeals said that conviction was fair, but the court took issue with what Judge Matthew Barrett said when he was sentencing Peters.
You are no hero, you abused your position, and you're a charlatan who used and is still using your prior position in office to peddle a snake oil that's been proven to be junk time and time again.
The Court of Appeals says the judge's statements show, quote, improper consideration of her right to free speech.
I believe that the sentence was appropriate, and I don't think that Judge Barrett actually considered improper things, but I certainly think that there's a risk that it could be perceived that way.
Republican Mesa County District Attorney Dan Rubenstein prosecuted Peters, and he's on board with today's opinion. So is Democratic Attorney General Phil Weiser.
There's going to be a resentencing based on permissible factors. I'd like to see that play out.
The same judge will be in charge of resentencing.
There was no indication from the Court of Appeals that the sentence needed to be reduced or that it was improperly harsh.
But what could change is what Democrat Governor Jared Polis does. Polis has indicated he'd wait for the appellate process to play out before considering clemency. But even today, he said he does consider Peters' sentence to be harsh.
The governor can issue a commutation or a pardon whenever the governor might want to. That doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. The right thing to do is let the court process play out.
The court also ruled President Trump's attempt to pardon Peters was junk since the president can't pardon someone convicted of a state crime. We attempted to reach Peters' attorney but did not hear back. A spokesperson for Governor Polis said he agreed with the court's decision. If he decides to let the resentencing play out, it could take a while. Both Rubenstein and Weiser say it could take anywhere from 6 months to 1.5 years to be resentenced, Mark.
Yes, so the same judge is doing that, and he may or may not choose that same sentence, right? Like, we could be going through all of this, and it comes back 9 years.
Right, and 6 to 18 months for that resentencing is interesting, too, because Peters can easily, and she may take this all the way up to the state Supreme Court. If she happened to drop it and just concede the convictions, it could happen a lot quicker.
Well, it has the attention of everyone up till the President of the United States. So, Spencer Soysher, appreciate it. Thank you. A federal judge is allowing a former East High School administrator who was shot by a student to move forward with his lawsuit against Denver Public Schools. The court's order says district officials, quote, seem to have knowingly opened the door for a mass shooting. Former East High Dean Eric Sinclair was one of 2 deans who was shot while searching a 17-year-old student for weapons in his backpack back in 2023. The student had previously been expelled from another district due to his possession of firearms, but the lawsuit claims that DPS only required administrators to search him for weapons after another student reported seeing him with a gun in class. In a federal lawsuit against DPS, Sinclair says district leaders should have seen the shooting coming because the district banned school resource officers, refused to expel or suspend students with histories of violence, and didn't train them adequately for pat-downs. In a ruling last week, a federal judge dismissed claims against some individual district leaders and school board members, but allowed Sinclair to move forward with his claims that the district acted with disregard for the safety and staff of students. In a statement today, a DPS spokesperson said that the case is still in early stages, and the district says, quote, that they look forward to the opportunity to present its arguments in court. After the shooting at Evergreen High School last year, leaders at Jeffco Public Schools are looking into whether metal detectors could make campuses safer. A study published by the district this week looks into the possible costs, effectiveness, and impacts of metal detectors in schools. Found metal detectors could cost up to $450,000 per school per year, with staffing making up the highest cost for that. It's also found that there's no clear evidence that metal detectors reduce school violence and that they can actually make students feel less safe. It also says that there are unintended consequences, things like racial bias during screenings. The district says they aren't making any decisions yet. This is the first step in a long process. They want input from parents and students as well.
We have a long way to go, I think, from doing this report, but the report at least provides everybody with a place to start. Hearing the voices of our community, especially after what they've been through, is so important. And we need to listen to them, and we need to work with them to decide how we can move forward.
The district says that the next step is talking to those communities and figuring out how the district would cover the costs to implement all of this. Stop me if you've heard this before, but Colorado's snowpack is pretty bad this year. In fact, this winter, scientists are now calling it a once-in-1,000-year event in some places. That has major implications, of course, for all the water that we drink and use for many months to come into the spring and summer. A new report from the Rocky Mountain Biological Laboratory in Gothic, Colorado, outside of Crested Butte, analyzed 40 years of satellite data and long-term field observations. The report says that what we're experiencing right now in the absence of climate change would occur once every 200 to 1,000 years. Now it could happen more often, potentially every 50 years in some places.
The best work that we've done indicates that this is an event that has a less than 1% annual probability in the absence of climate change. You could sort of think of that as it's the snow equivalent of at least a 100-year flood or a 100-year drought. And for some parts of the landscape, probably more like a once-in-a-1,000-year event.
Puts it all into perspective. So if we're looking at the glass half full or maybe 30% full, there's a lot that we can learn. Dr. Breckheimer, who we just heard from there, says he hopes that we can use this data from this winter to help innovation so that somewhere down the line, years from now, we'll be better equipped to live like this when these types of winters are perhaps more common. If there's anybody who knows this type of stuff, it's Chris Bianchi. Chris, you and I have talked about this a lot, and I've asked you these questions. It's like, is this the new normal or the new extreme of the new normal?
I think that's a great question, Mark, and I think some of the rhetoric that I've heard does lend people to sometimes say, is this the new normal? The answer is, Mark, it's the second thing you said. This is the new extreme, and maybe offering a little bit of optimism with a lot of the talk that we've heard here of late. This is obviously a horrendous snowpack year, right? Snowpack 26% where it should be. It's going to be our earliest melt and our lowest peak on record. But years like this are not going to be the new normal. We're not going to see this every 5 or 10 years, even with a warming climate. The climate is undoubtedly warming. That is making events like this perhaps more common and also certainly more extreme, but it is not causing them. What is causing this is our overall weather pattern, the La Nina that we've talked about, and a big ridge of high pressure. And this sort of winter is going to be maybe a more 1 in 50, 1 in 100-year event, but it's not going to be every winter. So just want to kind of clarify that a little bit, and we will certainly see some innovation going on based on what we've seen this past winter that hopefully will be applied in future winters to come.
Thank you. The Senate is once again trying to bring an end to a partial government shutdown. The Department of Homeland Security has now gone 47 days without funding, and Republican opposition means a deal could still be weeks away. Senate Republicans and Democrats have brokered a deal supported by the president that would fund most of the department. Most immigration enforcement would remain unfunded while Congress continues to negotiate over Democrats' demand for more oversight of federal officers. The Senate sent the partial funding deal over to the House today, but the House is in no rush to vote on it. House Republicans have demanded full funding for DHS. Most lawmakers are now home on a 2-week recess. We should note that ICE operations have effectively continued throughout the government shutdown thanks to funding from a separate bill that passed last year. So it's just the other Homeland Security employees who aren't getting paid. So speaking of people who aren't getting paid, While airports across the country have seen hours-long TSA lines during the government shutdown, Denver International Airport largely avoided the chaos that we saw in many other places. So the question that I had is, why? What were we doing different here? We're told at least two things made the difference. First, the airport credits the new security checkpoints that they installed in the last couple of years. They say the new layout lets passengers do more of the work themselves when they're going through security, which moves lines faster even when staffing is stretched super thin. Second, the TSA union that I spoke with said they had less call-outs than some other airports, partially because so many people donated gift cards for food and gas and helped stock the food pantries.
It's hard to come to work when you don't have money for gas, obviously, and especially at the price of the gas right now. It's hard to come to work if you don't have laundry detergent to wash your uniform.
TSA workers went more than a month without pay, although President Donald Trump signed an executive order last week to resume paying them, including back pay. The Denver airport collected more than 3,700 gift cards for TSA officers, things like food and gas just to get them to work. They say it really helped. Just wild that we're at a place where that's necessary right now. It's only been 2 days since the Supreme Court issued a ruling against Colorado's ban against conversion talk therapy, a kind of therapy aimed at changing someone's gender identity or sexual orientation. But state Democrats are still moving forward with efforts to discourage the practice. In an 8-1 decision this week, the Supreme Court found Colorado's ban on talk therapy violates the First Amendment because it, quote, censors speech based on a viewpoint. But a Democrat-backed bill at the state capitol here in Colorado would still punish conversion therapy providers by allowing former clients to sue for damages with no statute of limitations. Republicans accuse the bill's sponsor of pursuing a de facto ban despite the Supreme Court's ruling. But the bill's sponsors say they have a duty to protect Coloradans from conversion therapy, which major medical bodies have deemed harmful and ineffective.
The bill seeks to have a de facto conversion therapy banned here in Colorado. I'm not going to argue one way or the other on the merits of conversion therapy. But what I will say is that the Supreme Court was certainly clear on the First Amendment.
In a federal republic, states can declare for their citizens what is in those folks' best interest. And we know scientifically that conversion therapy is in no one's best interest.
The bill passed the House today along party lines, still has to pass the Senate before going to the governor for approval. It is a bad year to be a wild horse in Colorado. Feds say this year's drought means thousands of horses need to be removed from their habitats across the West. And soccer is a great exercise for the legs. Now it might be good for the mind as well. That's coming up next. There are a lot of unexpected consequences of this year's poor snowpack. For example, the feds say the drought and wildfire potential means that they need to round up thousands of wild horses across the West. And it's not a fun experience at all for the horses, so animal rights activists really aren't happy about this. The Bureau of Land Management is planning to remove 14,000 wild horses across several states this year. That includes more than 1,000 here in Colorado. The BLM says the wild horse population is growing too fast and the resources like water and grass for them to eat can't sustain current population levels. The roundups are a pretty wild process in and of themselves. The feds use low-flying helicopters to round up the horses and drive them into corrals before transferring them to holding facilities. Some of those horses will later be adopted out. Animal rights advocates say the helicopter roundups are too dangerous for the horses. They've called for alternatives like using fertility control to slow population growth. That's also a pretty wild process in and of itself as well because staffers shoot the horses with darts containing birth control vaccines. So talking about the snowpack, Chris, there is still snow out there. In fact, it's snowing up in the mountains tonight, even though all the ski areas, or a bunch of them, are closing this weekend.
Yeah, they certainly are. A lot of them obviously been a brutal, brutal winter. We've talked about this at length and all the consequences of that. But at least here, we've gotten a fair bit of snow over the last couple of days in our western and southwestern mountains in the San Juans and the West Elks. And tonight, the central and northern mountains will get as much as a foot of snow. And that's good news. That'll at least slow down the snowpack melt by probably a week or two, what we've seen this week. But that heaviest snow will be late tonight, early tomorrow morning. Snow basically done by sunrise tomorrow. Could get a brief rain shower in Denver late tonight as a cold front moves through. In Denver, what we get is the wind that'll impact the Rockies home opener tomorrow with wind, 20 to 40 mile an hour gusts, temperatures in the 50s, and that 7-day forecast Otherwise, pretty elite early spring weather with temperatures mostly in the 60s and 70s. End of next week looking more active, but until then, early spring bliss with lots of sunshine.
There is tulip trouble at Denver Botanic Gardens. As the flowers start to bloom in the springs in Colorado, there's something going on there as well. The Botanic Gardens usually showcases more than 16,000 tulips each spring, but folks at the Botanic Gardens say that this year the bed is infected with a common tulip fungal blight, likely caused by contaminated bulbs from the supplier. But soil recovery takes time, so the tulips won't be back in bloom until 2029. The good news is the daffodils and most other flowers are just fine. You can also still find tulips in other smaller displays around the garden. This just affects the big ones that you see every year. A new initiative invites students to build healthy mental health habits while they're flexing their soccer skills.
The soccer's the hook. The soccer gets them excited about the games and the activities, and then they're getting some health messaging along the way.
Love it. And a reminder, you can also catch Next streaming every night on 9 News Plus at 6 p.m. And Next is also a podcast each weeknight. Find us wherever you listen. It can be hard to get kids to open up about their mental health, especially when those conversations take place in an intimidating environment, like a doctor's office, for example. The Boys and Girls Club of Metro Denver is partnering with a group called Grassroots Soccer to make those conversations a lot more fun.
3 bounces. You want to let it bounce 3 times? All right, 1, 2, 3. Right now we're just warming up. We're playing soccer. Kids are having fun. There we go. Nice. But then we start to layer in some mental health messaging. Good.
We saw a need for the mental health in after-school program.
This is our healthy mind ball, okay? This is gonna represent us all keeping a healthy mind and supporting each other. Keeping it in the air is gonna represent us keeping a healthy mind. Okay, you guys ready? Here we go. Dominic.
Being able to have conversations about mental health is sometimes tricky. That's why when we incorporate the different soccer aspects of it, it makes it a little bit more approachable with kids.
And now we're gonna add some things in. What did you guys say? What's the biggest thing that stresses you out? School. Let's just go with school. That could be tests, homework. All right, so this is our first stress ball here. Here we go. Dominic. Dominic. Oh, this is mad stressful, right? But what can help us cope? What does cope mean?
I think mental health is like what people are like feeling sometimes. I deal with sometimes anger, sadness, and maybe even anxiety or jealousy.
Let's say, what about friends and family? How do you cope with a tough situation with your friends and family?
The mental health topics that we've talked about for the past 11 weeks is slowly but surely allowing kids to not only grow their soccer skills, but their mental health skills as well.
1, 2, 3,
skills! Nice work, guys. Awesome job. You can leave the tennis ball.
I think we could all use a little mental health ball.
Oh, we sure could.
Just toss it around.
Just get it bouncing around the
There
newsroom.
you go. Marilyn, thank you for your feedback. We'll be right back. We had some very kind feedback last night from Steve and Hudson, who said that the show is just as dumb when Kyle is gone as when he's here. Well, Tom from Denver must have been watching last night. He writes in tonight and says, how about some good feedback instead of bad? We like Kyle's replacements while he's gone. Keep up the good work. Tom and Steve, we appreciate you both watching. We're back with another show tomorrow, whether you like it or not. We'll see you next time. Have a good night.